Starting off my list this year, it's actually a revisit of last year with Monster Hunter Rise. Although the base version of Rise didn't make it into my top 5 last year, its expansion Sunbreak really knocked it out of the park, adding a lot of quality of life elements and new endgame content that made me really want to keep playing. With the more condensed hub, it meant you spent more of your time out on hunts, and on these hunts, it was even more enjoyable, with the new endemic life such as marionette spiders allowing you to yeet monsters across the arena, the new switch skills that really mix things up for some weapon types, and of course, all the monsters added, both new and old. Having the flagship monster of the expansion, Malzeno, teleporting behind me with the nothing personal kid is just peak Monster Hunter. And although maybe not as relevant for me, since I had someone to play with, the fact that they added missions so that you could bring story characters is simply a great feature for people, and although minor, it does help to give some character to the otherwise bland Monster Hunter NPCs that we're accustomed to. With Sunbreak, combined with the continuous content patches, Capcom have really made Rise into a more complete package. And until they finally make Monster Hunter World 2, Sunbreak is an amazing entry point for the franchise, and I would highly recommend that you check it out. Sneaking into my top 5 in the final month is a little known game called Potionomics. If any of you remember Reciteer, a game from 2010 about a girl running an item shop in order to pay a debt collecting fairy, you'll see the similarities, at least on the surface. Replace Reset with a penniless witch called Sylvia, and Tyr with Owl, the owl. You'll definitely see there's some similarities, but Potionomics is quite different in many regards. For one, you don't have horrible dungeon crawling, but instead a pleasant potion making system as you try to balance out your ingredients. Also, rather than you haggling with customers in the traditional way, by placing offers in turn, Potionomics opts for a haggling deck building card game. And what makes this card game so special is how well the theme of selling is represented with cards like Build Rapport or Craftsmanship. Not only does it justify your cards, but it really helps build the characters of the game. Potionomics goes for the classic dating sim-esque system of you choosing to spend your limited time to build your relationships, and through that you receive additional cards to use. These cards are directly tied with each individual character. For example, there's a bodybuilding walrus called Muktuk, who's constantly flexing anytime he's on screen. So you can imagine all his cards, such as Pump Up, are designed for big swings whenever you play. In the same ways, you have characters like Roxanne, who's all about deception with cards like Flattery and Emotional Minefield. It ties directly with the story, and combined with all the systems of the game, help build this fantastic world. A world which has been beautifully drawn and is carried by the very emotive characters. It's a wholesome, feel-good game that I'm so happy I could tell you all about today. From one business management game to another, PlateUp is a restaurant management roguelike that at first could be seen as an Overlook clone, but it's definitely far more than that, and to be honest, I'd say it's actually better. Rather than you trying to make things work in a predetermined level, you're designing your own restaurant, with constant equipment and upgrades that make each run feel different. Combined with all the negative traits your customers throw at you, with the ever-increasing number of customers, there's a nice curve of difficulty as you try to create a kitchen that can meet the demands of everyone. Then of course, you have that overcooked feeling of panic when your best laid plans are suddenly on fire, or you can see all the timers of the customers freezing outside in the cold because you thought it'd be a good business venture to offer starters, mains, and desserts, and also let them order twice their main, and change their order midway. It's amazing the scenarios that can come up, and as someone who used to be a chef and now whose role is to build internal efficiencies, it really caters to my own life and is an absolute blast with playing with friends. As the only Bash Bro who isn't obsessed with wrestling, Rumbleverse is the closest thing I'm going to get to understanding the hype. At face value, it shouldn't work. It's a battle royale fighting game that has a wrestling theme slapped on it, and yet it totally does work. One of the hardest things about fighting games is understanding why something didn't work, and thus, how do I improve? Rumbleverse does a really great job of directly showing why your opponent's move beat your move, and features a relatively simple rock, paper, scissors present in all fighting games. Block beats attack, attack beats grab, grab beats block. Throw in some rolling, weapons, and special moves, and suddenly you've got yourself a party. And let's talk about that party, the Battle Royale part. Unlike a lot of other Battle Royales, you are directly rewarded for fighting with the inclusion of perks. So if someone hides out until the end of the game, you have a significant advantage with all of these passive bonuses. And of course, the other thing that isn't pleasant about some Battle Royales is whenever you get killed off screen with no counterplay. Being an entirely melee-focused game, you can hear everyone coming. Combine that with the third-person camera, you don't normally just die with no warning. And when you do, it's probably because someone elbow dropped you from a 10-story building, which, to be honest, it's just quite hilarious. And it's hilarious because of the wrestling motif that manages to make every action feel weighty and over the top. It's a real testament on how you can make a battle royale feel rewarding and package that in essentially a fighting game. I had such a blast this year with Rumbleverse, and it's a free-to-play game, so there's no reason you shouldn't give it a chance either. Neon White for me is not only my game of the year, but also what I think to be the most inventive game of this year. On the outset, it looks like a pretty generic shooter, but really, it's a puzzle game first, shooter second. The weapons are what you'd come to expect. You've got your pistol, your machine gun, rocket launcher, and so on. But each weapon also features some form of mobility skill built in. That pistol? It's actually also a super jump. The SMG, a ground pound. The rocket launcher, it's actually your grappling hook. Each time you use one of these abilities, you discard that weapon. So every time you pick up a gun, you ask yourself, how do I kill all the enemies while also traversing the levels, knowing I'll be constantly rotating through these guns? It makes for this ebb and flow, which is just a joy to go through, and what makes it one of the few games where I actually cared about my level times. Because that's the other aspect of the game. It was designed with speedrunning in mind. But even if you're not gunning for the top times, due to the guns limiting your movement, you know whenever you enter a level what the intended route is. If there's a pistol, you're probably going to make a jump. I call this a puzzle game, but you're never standing still to work out the route. You're holding that W key, pushing forward, reacting to all the enemies and guns you encounter, and because of how well the levels are designed, you feel cool even when you're traversing levels the quote-unquote standard way. I really can't describe that feeling of satisfaction. It's something you need to play to really experience. And although the story isn't the most intriguing, I have to give shoutouts to the voice acting. White, the main character, is voiced by Steve Bloom, and whenever I say that's Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop, these characters have such similar mannerisms that he was the perfect fit for this role. Heaven turns out to be a boring place, but having people like Courtney Lin, Sungwon, and many others really liven the place up, in combination with the amazing soundtrack. Of all the games you didn't play in 2022, do yourself a favor and make sure you play Neon White, my personal 2022 Game of the Year.